Ali, this is a nightmare that seems to be metastasizing. In Philadelphia, you can see these balls of flames that we were just talking to Tom Costello about. This is near the Roosevelt Mall. So now we're talking about the potential for injuries on the ground, obviously injuries from that plane or fatalities in both circumstances. This seems like a bad time to have utter chaos in the federal government and at the FAA.
Yeah, this is a really complicated matter because Northeast Philadelphia Airport falls under the Philadelphia Aerodrome. So the larger air traffic control area that controls that area is Philadelphia and the Philadelphia Tower. It's responsible for a lot of incoming and outgoing flights anywhere into the region. It's a pretty busy airport, actually. This flight was coming in from Morristown, New Jersey, as Tom was saying. These Learjets are equipped because of the size of them and the range that they can fly. They're equipped to put medical patients on. They can put stretchers on them. Very unusual situation because to fly a Learjet, your qualifications have to be pretty high. So we're not quite sure, and we never like to speculate this early into an accident as to what could have happened. But it does seem to have overshot the runway, and when you do that, you end up in, first of all, a pretty residential area in Northeast Philadelphia. So it's densely populated. You know, one of the good fortunes we always seen when a plane doesn't land exactly where it's supposed to be is that often it's in an unpopulated area. That's not the case here. This is a populated area. Roosevelt Mall is obviously a busy place. I'm looking at aerial shots right now, and there are closures all around the area because this is a big concern. It's also a very short journey on an aircraft that is very powerful, and because it's a jet, carries a great deal of fuel. Jet fuel is very flammable, so this has the potential to be much more serious than that looks at the moment. We do know what we know right now is it does seem to have been on a medical mission coming from Morristown, New Jersey. Very short flight, not long at all, but that's often the case with these medevac flights or these things in which they're moving patients. But yeah, this has landed outside of a fairly busy airport. Northeast Philadelphia is the second busiest airport in the Philadelphia metro area, but they all fall. I've flown out of the Philadelphia regional airports a lot. They all fall under Philadelphia. So any air traffic control information you need, if you're flying out of any of these small airports, it gets governed by the ATC and the controllers that deal with Philadelphia Airport because it's all in very similar related airspace, and it is incredibly busy airspace. Obviously, for those of us who live in New York, you have three major airports and a bunch of subsidiary airports, so there's probably no busier airport, but we've been talking about DCA with Reagan. There are three major airports in that area and a lot of subsidiary airports. This area around Philadelphia has a lot of them. So this is a busy airport area. It's a busy area for air flights. And it is sadly an area where if a plane does overshoot or something happens and it doesn't land on the pad of the airport, there's a great deal of danger of getting into an occupied area, where people live. One of the instructions pilots always have when they're having a problem landing or taking off, when you're that close to the ground, it's the most dangerous aspect of flight, both taking off and landing. And the instruction a pilot always has is you fly that plane until it's not flyable anymore, until it's onto the ground. But if you are taking off or landing in an area where you're running out of runway and there's nothing there, you aim that plane to the place where you are going to cause the least amount of damage. They say if there's houses, aim between houses. If there's trees, aim between trees. Try and get that plane to where it has to go so that when that fire comes up, it's the most important thing. And when a plane's going down, in your training, and if you're a Learjet pilot, you've got a lot of training. One of the things you learn is you turn everything off, including the fuel, because the biggest danger, you can land a plane sometimes successfully in a crash. The biggest danger is a fire. Once the plane has caught fire, you not only are in severe danger inside that plane and all the passengers are in severe danger, but so is everybody around you. And unfortunately, this very preliminary reporting is that this is what has happened. Obviously, we're seeing images of it, so we know that this is what has happened. The thing that every pilot fears, and that is a fire on landing, on crashing, or any time during flight. That's the most serious and most difficult thing to get out of. So we don't know whether that crash was survivable when it landed, but that kind of fire makes it look very, very concerning.
Yeah, indeed. I'm just going to give some updated information I want to give to the viewers. There were two people on board that aircraft. It was en route to Springfield Branson National Airport in Missouri. That is according to the FAA. And just to continue on what you're saying, Allie, because what we're looking at here is not just the flames, but also the smoke. And I can only imagine how toxic that
Yep.
smoke is from jet fuel, especially since, as you said, this plane had just taken off. That means it was full of fuel. And so I'm wondering, those houses look really, really close, and the danger
Yeah.
to people there, not just from potential fire, but also from smoke.
Yeah, and the spread of fire, as we watched in Los Angeles, right? When you're in an urban area
Absolutely.
and homes are very, very close together, there's all these sort of fantasies about how you make sure that home fires don't spread to other places by having brush that's not too clear to your, close to your house and 100 feet and 200 feet. That's not how it works in a place like Northeast Philadelphia. These are heavily populated areas. Homes are very, very close together. So it's not a situation where if one or two houses are on fire, you're safe. This is going to be a full fire response in the area because they're going to have to make sure that everything on every block in that area isn't there and that embers from the fire don't end up on someone else's house and creating a much, much bigger problem. As I say, when you're thinking about a plane crash, it's a terrible, terrible thing, but you hope, and this is what all pilots do, they all try and say, if this plane is going down, how do I get it to go down with the minimal impact, both obviously to the people on board, but to the people on the ground, and that always has to do with fire. So there's only so much you can do. You can turn the fuel off in a plane, but once it crashes, very, very easy to ignite that fuel, and that plane would have been a plane with probably fully fueled. Small planes don't tend to fly around without full fuel if they can avoid doing so because it's a safety mechanism. On large planes that are going across the country, they tend not to have more fuel than you need. But on a small plane, you have to have at least half an hour more fuel than you would need to complete the trip that you filed for. So it's possible that that plane was going to refuel somewhere along the line, but that's a lot of fuel that's already on the plane and that's burning. And once that fuel gets onto things around it, there's very little firefighters can do except try and provide for the area around it to hope that fire doesn't spread.
Allie, please stay with me. I want to bring back in Randy Babbitt, former administrator of the Federal Aviation Administration. He joins me on the phone. Mr. Babbitt, thank you for coming back. We appreciate you spending some more time with us. There are still bodies being recovered in the Potomac from the crash that took place between that airplane and chopper, that fatal crash. And now there is a second plane down within just a couple of days. What will the FAA be doing in the immediate aftermath? What is the job? Walk us through what the FAA would be doing regarding this plane that has gone down in Philly.
Well, first, yes, I'm spending my afternoon and evening with MSNBC, but and I know precious little, to be very candid. This accident was, just obviously very recent. But the FAA, the first thing they would do is try to get all the records, talk to the tower personnel. What was the weather conditions? They're certainly going to coordinate with the NTSB, who will, actually be charged with investigating the accident. But the FAA has accident investigators as well, and they'll try to ascertain as much data as they could. They'll certainly record the tracks. My understanding is this aircraft shot an approach, and it was a medevac airplane, if I understand correctly, and it overshot the runway.
It was.
There's a little bit of history. It's sort of a blessing and a curse. The medevacs, it's always an emergency condition. You have someone you're either going to go get someone from an accident or you're taking someone from an accident, and they're obviously, because we're flying them in and out, they're not healthy. They've been injured, and so a lot of times these groups, the medevac pilots, sort of push the edge of the envelope to make sure they can get somebody to a hospital in sometimes marginal conditions, candidly. And I don't know what the weather up. I live close enough to know that it's raining here, so it was probably a wet runway, and they were trying to get on the ground to get some people some emergency help, and something went wrong.